warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Today its lecture is all about the connective lecture. We have already started social identity and change, and in social identity and change, we have uh, age identities, and in age identities, by last chapter we simply take a halt due to the call for prayer, and I'm going to start it with the old people. Right, it's page 31. Let's begin. In many societies, older people are respected and appreciated for the guidance based on experience that they can offer to the community. Elder, for example, can be source of wisdom and can help to solve disputes. This aspect of old age has been less obvious in modern industrial society, where communities and extended families are often weaker. Based on the idea that we now live in a global village, a group called the Elders, first brought together by Nelson Mandela in 2007, offer its collective wisdom to help solve some of the world's problems and to inspire younger people to act on them. Uh, More people survive into old age than used to be the case. Old age in modern industrial society now covers such a huge age range that it has become widely accepted to think of it as being subdivided. 65 to 74, the young elderly people; 75 to 84, the old elderly people; and 85 and over, very elderly people. This helps us to recognize that there can be a big difference within the category of old age. One important role of many older people is as grandparents or even great grandparents in modern industrialized society. More people today know their grandparents than was the case in the past. So, according to these two paragraphs, there are certain things we need to explain and we need to understand. The first of all, as I mentioned earlier, it's all about the social identity. When we talk about the social identity, in which we need to understand there are certain factors which can influence the change, and there are some factors of the change, and one of them is age identity. And when we talk about the age identity, obviously we got different age groups in it. Today I'm talking about the old age. As we simply use the term old age, it's all about the experience, it's all about the wisdom, it's all about the people who really know how to make things easier for the upcoming generation. First thing. Secondly, the very first person, the Nelson Mandela, give this term in this context that the people of old age, they are the people who are going to bring change through youngsters. So if youngsters want to do something better, they want to revolutionize this world, the most important factor, the most important key for the youngster is to get experience through the older people, and through them, I mean, things will be far more easier to solve. One thing. Second thing is, though, is in the whole world, the old people are considered to be more experienced. I mean, but with the passage of time, things are entirely changed a bit with the passage of time. So now, in modern industrial society, in certain part of the world, one can say that it's considered to be the burden on the economics of a society. So the first, it's burden. Secondly, the experience. So we need to take them in the both ways, experience and the burden. And so the elderly people are so much in numbers that we even subcategorize old age, and we got three different categories in it. Like 65 to 64, they are considered to be young elderly people. Then 65 to 84, people are considered to be, you can say, old elderly people. And 85 and over, they are considered to be the very elderly people. So I mean, there are certain countries in the world where you can say the great grandfathers, I mean, like China, like Japan, like Korea. So the people are very helpful in certain ways. So there are a couple of things I need to explain as far as the experience is concerned. I mean, in many country, many part of the world, they are the breadwinners, even because with the best of time, inflation, uh, uh, low resources, lesser resources, more population, parents has very lesser time for their kids, mothers are decided to go for the career, or even they are entrusted to work outside the home. So there are so many things which were in the past the responsibility of the parents, which are now taken by the grand family because they have free time and they are getting pension and so many benefits from the government, so they can even utilize their pension or their benefits on their next generation, like the grandchildren. Whilst an average woman of the mid 18th century could expect to die 12 years before her last grandchild was born, a woman of 1970 could expect to live 25 years after the birth of her last grandchild. Anderson, because there has been a trend in many developed countries for people having children later in life, it may become normal for people to become a grandparent in their 80s or if they had children late, and their children do too. This is very widely variation in the age at which people become grandparents, from their late 30s or to advanced old age, which leads to variation in the role and identity of the grandparent. Better health at a later age has led to many older people being able to play an active role in the family life as a grandparents rather than being seen as a burden needing to be financially supported and cared uh, for by the adult children. Many grandparents are able to play a positive part, for example, contributing financially, especially if they are still working, looking after the young grandchildren, especially where the parents took work, playing a part in the primary socialization of their grandchildren, providing nurturing and emotional support, helping to keep culture tradition alive, passing on stories and wisdom to the grandchildren. While some grandparents live close to their children and their families and help out on a daily basis, for example, taking the role of an unpaid childminder if both parents are a single parent are working. Many live too far from their children for this. Both parent and children tend to lead full lives, and time with grandparents. Our grandchildren may have to be planned and may involve specific activities. So, I mean, this is all we have in the older people or the old age. If I simply in a nutshell, I simply tell you there are so many factors again which can positive and the negative aspect of the older people. So I mean, financial assistance, one of the positive thing, experience, one of the positive things. I mean, they work as a child minder in the absence of their children, a positive thing. I mean, if they are healthy and still working, so they can even support nurturing of the grandchildren is a positive thing. That emotional attachment, the supportive role played by the grandparents, again, is a positive thing. But what about the negative aspect of the old age? Obviously, they are burden on the economy of the society. Governments have to pay a lot of money on them for pension or even for the medical treatment, because no facilities are appropriate in every part of the world, especially in reference to the developed countries. But still, I mean, in many governments, I mean, the ratio between the older people and the youngsters is a variation. I mean, for instance, like in Europe, in many countries in Europe, I mean, older people are having more greater proportion as compared to young people. So this is what we have in the social identity, and how the age change, the social scenario change, the social control change, a positive or a negative in the building of a progressive society. So next we have is the children. The way in which childhood is socially constructed has, according to the historical research, changed completely in the last 500 years. Philippi Aries has gone so far as to argue that childhood in the modern sense did not exist in the Middle Ages. Children were not seen as different from adults. They wore the same clothes, worked alongside adults, and shared the same recreation. The invention of the printing press and the growing of the formal education created a new separate world of childhood. Today, whole professions, educational psychologists, uh, Mediterranean, pediatricians, teachers, physicians are based on the assumption that children are not yet fully developed people and they are vulnerable and need protection and guidance. Aries says this idea of childhood is a modern invention or a social construction. So childhood are the it's you can say a new brand. It's a new invention. This term is not found in the premature history. I mean, almost 500 years before, no one can simply identify when your childhood ends or when your adulthood started. So things are mixed up, but with the passage of time, with the awareness, with the printing arrival of the printing press, now childhood is considered to be a reality. It's a social construction. We simply have a separate things for the children, bringing about the children. again, we got two things together. When we talk about the childhood, it's all about the nurturing or the nature or the biological. Still, people, sociologists, they simply discuss, are in debate. I mean, what is actually we have? Childhood is a biological phenomena, or it's purely, when we talk about the nurturing, then it's typically a sociology, or you can say social interactive based process, in which through primary socialization we can simply give attention, simply convey our culture, our traditions, our social norm to our upcoming generation. So first of all, when we talk about the childhood, the very first thing is the new brand. 500 years before, we don't have anything which simply relate a separate identity for the childhood or the adulthood. One thing. Second thing, now things are entirely changed. It's all about the commercial world we are living in. Now the big company, the multinational companies, they simply invest a lot on their products just to attract kids. So that is the reason one can say that now all the cartoon, all the movies, all the superheroes, I mean, all they are invented just to say, to capture the maximum customers in childhood. You can say the section. So a child love to buy things like superheroes, Captain America, Batman, Superman, and blah blah blah, so many stuff like that. One of the most striking aspects of the child industry is that it is defined in relation to adults. Adults have authority over children, and children are largely dependent on adults. Children have to be obeyed by their parents and their teachers, and may be physically punished if they do not obey. Holt Williams argued that there are three type of adult control on the children. So in this paragraph, it's all about how to, you can simply uh, put your children on the rampant, how to observe discipline, how can you change their personality, and which kind of control we have on children. I mean, obviously there are sources of control: teachers, one thing, your elders, your family. So according to Hood and Williams, there are three different kinds of controls we have on children. Space: children are required to stay within the space. They may be told to play in the house, are allowed to go a certain distance from home. Societies Children in traditional societies often have greater freedom to roam over a wider area. In Western society, concern over safety related to both traffic or danger from other people, sometimes known as stranger danger, means that children are watched over more and kept closer to home. So the first type of control, it's all about space. It's in the pre-industrial society, one can say that there isn't any restriction for the kids. They can simply walk, they can move here and there with their parents, or even in the absence of their parents, they can move in fields. One thing, so it's all about the space in the in the pre-industrial society. No restriction at all, because there are certain things which are not considered to be a danger. For example, now in Western society, in modern society, developed society, we are more concerned about the kids, more watchful. So because obviously the fast moving traffic or the danger of the other community people, I mean, even it is possible that the difference of religion, difference of culture can uh, make a cause just to make harm to your kids. Second, it's a time. Parents often control children by time, such as when they must go to bed and how long they spend on homework and watching television. Children have to go to school for set hours. Adults also decide whether a child is old enough for particular activities or the privileges. So first it's all about the space, and second it's all about time. Still, we have a greater check as far as the time is concerned. No, it's the right time to go to bed. This is the time how long you need to be on bed. I mean, which it's the appropriate time to be out, how long you can be out to play in the garden or in the ground with your friends. So, bodies, what children wear, and hairstyle, and the way they sit, walk, run, act, all are controlled by adults. Children have ways of resisting adult authority. Children can act up, that is, behave as they were adults, perhaps by smoking or swearing. Children often look for ways to give the impression that they are older than they really are. They can also sometimes act down, acting younger than they are in order to get some of the concession given to the very young. Both form of resistance can be seen as a being about children trying to escape from being seen as the children. So there are two kind of things which are which are the part of children. First of, it's looking, you act up or act down. Act up is all about your behavior, and you try to pose that you are older enough to be given a freedom to do certain activities like smoking or something like that, or even going out with friends. And sometimes when you try to control your kids, they try to act down because they want to get more privileges, more benefits, to prove they are still uh, children. They're not young enough. I mean, so you can't put burden on them, you can't give responsibility to them. So there are two type of control: resistance. It's all about look up and look down. Part of the idea of the childhood in the 20th century was that it was a period of happiness and innocence in which children were, or at least should be, free of adult worries. Neil Postman argued that childhood changed again with the growth of television, computers, and videos. These means that children are exposed to adult world earlier. They cannot be kept innocent of the adult world of sex, violence, and so on. Postman cities increased in crime by children and the tendency for children to dress and behave more like adults. Since Postman first raised these concerns, the growth of the internet and the relatively ease with which adult image and content can be accessed has probably shortened the period of childhood innocence for many children. So, according to Postman, a sociologist, he simply have certain concerns about the childhood. The very first thing about the childhood is all about the innocence. I mean, so the children lost their innocence quite earlier as compared to their past age. Now, with the advent of internet, television program, movies, and obviously the very busy schedule of their parents, now children have more opportunity to watch certain thing which is not appropriate, or even when they watch cartoons, there are certain things which simply encourage them to act like elderly people. So this is we have in children. The last article I have is the teenagers. The idea of youth or teenager is a relatively modern one. It was only in Western societies in the second half of the 20th century that people of this age were thought of as a distinctive category. Growing influenced by the 1950s mean that teenagers had money to spend, and industries such as popular music and fashion developed to meet the demand of this new market. There was concern that the emergence of this new group meet a generation gap between teenager and the people of their parents. Generation have few shared interests, little common and different opinions. The teenager, again, as I mentioned earlier, in childhood, 500 years before, we don't have any idea of a childhood. Now we simply consider childhood as a new brand. It's a social construction of an age. Same is the case with the teenager. We use this term teenager after the Second World War, especially in 1950s. This separate category is establishing its brand. And you know why it is established? Because due to certain inventions like pop music, like jazz, like the style, the hairstyle, the way they dress up. So obviously it is taken as a new market, and through which we can invest and we can get a lot of benefits. So in late 50s, teenagers were given a specific privilege. They were considered to be a separate identity, and the multinational companies, the singer, are they are simply given them a specific weightage. I mean, to consider that they have a uh, certain thing which we can't find in childhood or even in adulthood. Functionalists like Eisenstadt view the teenager years as a difficult period because they involve status and anxiety. Industrial society emphasize achieved, not ascribed status. And therefore, young people feel pressure to achieve. One response is to rely on the peer group. They are, after all, people who are going through the same problems and anxieties. Young people therefore tended to share norms and values, even to form a youth culture. But Eisenstadt saw this as a functional since it helped people through the transition to old adult life. Some breaking of the norms, even if teenagers got into trouble with the authorities, was seen as a testing of the boundaries of acceptable behavior as young people sought to establish their status and identity. According to functionalists, I mean especially the Eisenstadt, one of the functionalists, he simply considered teenager. This is a period which is considered to be a bit difficult because there are certain things you need to fix. I mean, it's a growing age. You people are you have a lot of energy. love to prove something, living, working with the peer groups, more energy to perform something either positive or negative. So it's a kind of pressure which can simply exert on the teenagers. And as I mentioned earlier, is a kind of thing which was not present before 1950s. So a lot of pressure, presence of the peer group, uh, opportunities, media, and so many things gel together to encourage teenagers to perform certain thing, either it's good or bad. The view came into question with the development from the 1950s onward of the youth uh, subcultures, which were seen as rejecting or rebelling against the dominant culture values. New markets developed the idea of working class youth subculture as resistance to the capitalism. Young people were able to rebel because they were less held back than adults by responsibility. These youth subcultures were marked by the rejection of the mainstream society's norm and values. For example, the music and the clothing was often designed to provoke a negative reaction from authority or from older people in general. A good example of this is the punk style of mid 1970s. So, if we talk about the teenagers, it's a new brand, as I mentioned earlier, and all the rebelling sentiments in the society is always through the teenagers because they have lesser responsibilities, no fear at all, uh, more confident to perform something, and as they are far away from the responsibilities, so one can say that they are more challenging. They try to invent something, at the same time they try to preserve their culture. I mean, while they are living in some, wherever they are living, they try to perform, they try to prove that they are something different, and it is not easy to suppress them. So this is we have for today. I mean, today I simply wrap up the whole identities. It's first week, it's all about the children, it's old age, then females, or you can say gender discrimination, teenagers. In my next lecture I will give you a review how the social class, gender, ethnicity, and the age identity may be changing due to globalization, increased choices, and the creation of the new hybrid identities. Till my next lecture, it's the time to call my lecture a day. Take great care of yourself and hope to see you tomorrow. Same channel, same person. Goodbye.